Do you find yourself ever feeling like your financial picture is a movie in a foreign language without subtitles? Or do you find yourself trying different types of strategies and nothing really able to stick? The reality behind that is there are different languages when it comes to understanding our lives, especially our finances, and different stories that each one of us come to the table with, experiences, understandings, both consciously and subconsciously. Today, on this episode of Thrive Forward, we welcome Dr. Alex Melkumian, who is a financial psychologist. What does that mean? Well, you're going to have to tune in to our conversation today, where there is everything from breaking down our financial mindset and wellness to tactical tips on how to have conversations with your partner around money. What should you be doing? Should you just be talking about your bills? Or is there somewhere else that you should be starting that Dr. Alex leads us through? Tune in to this fantastic episode with Dr. Alex. Dr. Alex, thank you so much for joining the Thrive Forward podcast. It is sunny outside on the West Coast, I am assuming.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shannon, for having me. It's sunny. It's about 68, 70 degrees here in Los Angeles. So what a pleasure to be on your show.
Maybe by the time this airs, Alex, it will not have snow on the ground in Minnesota. I can't wait till I can get on a plane and come out to the West Coast. California is one of my favorite places, as you and I talked about. The Santa Monica Pier is by far like one of my favorite places in the world. I don't know why. It's just very nostalgic for me, I think. Represents a lot of different vacations and moments in my life.
Well, we can dig into that. As a therapist, I can ask you a few questions about it, but yeah.
Yeah. So you're joining us with just an amazing background. And I love all of the content that you are sharing. How did you get to the space that you are in today, helping people in their relationships with money and building awareness? How did Alex become Dr. Alex?
Amazing question. So we're going to get deep really quick and immediately. So I'm a financial therapist. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a new profession that really blends the mental health side or clinical psychology and financial planning. And my space is really to help clients really improve their financial wellness through addressing their mindset and their financial psychology through linking money and emotions. And so as a financial therapist, it makes me kind of unique in the landscape of therapists, because anytime I meet a therapist and I say, hey, I'm a financial therapist, financial psychologist, they do the whole like head tilt. And they're kind of wondering, oh, what is that? I've never heard of that in our industry. And the same thing goes for the financial planners. They've never heard of financial therapy, financial psychology. And for the planners, it's really the soft skills, as we refer to, basically, active listening and empathy that financial planners really started to incorporate, a few years ago as a profession, and utilizing these therapeutic techniques in their practices, which has definitely improved their outcomes with their clients.
Absolutely. I have to say, in my practice, that is what has set me apart and allowed me to be as successful as I have been. I see past the dollar amounts and see the people that are sitting at my desk, and that they come with real experiences and real emotions, and each of them differently too, is where I find the most connection to my clients. And the reason why I love what I do is because it really is so much more than the financial aspect of what we do. It's the relationships that we build. How did you find yourself in this in this career that is kind of that odd redheaded stepchild of both of the industries that you're in. Cause I also love therapy. My therapist and I have been seeing each other. I consider her a friend I pay for now, that I go and I sit down with her, and it's fantastic. But she is that person for me, and we've been together for almost 14 years. So it's a true
Wow.
relationship, which, you don't always hear about that, right?
What a success story. And I
Yeah,
love
I
hearing that.
know.
I've definitely had
It's
some
crazy in
long-term
that
clients,
perspective.
not 14 years necessarily, but actually about, 12 to 14 years ago. I was always really interested in the helping professions, and I'm an empath at heart, and got into therapy and social work early on in my career in my 20s. I went to school for that, and it really just kind of coincided in my life that I started getting into seeing clients around the end of the last recession, around 2008 and 9. All of a sudden, a few of my clients started to bring in these money issues onto my proverbial couch. And I just started looking around, and what I noticed is that literally nobody in my field is talking about these subjects. I wanted to get some support from other therapists and other psychologists or find some research, and there was literally crickets on this topic. And I just thought it was so, on the one hand, interesting. And that's why I really kind of got into it. But it really, showed me that there's a huge void and a hole for the services that are so needed. And what I saw was the suffering, the deprivation, the despair, the huge amount of emotional toll and trapped emotions that my clients were bringing in to the sessions with them, and all they were talking about was their relationship with money. And as an empath, of course, it was kind of difficult for me to sit through that. But we started using, sort of garden variety therapeutic techniques to go through and help our clients the best way we could. And at that time is when I started to really delve into creating my own curriculum. I started a little financial therapy group called Beyond the Numbers. How cliche, right?
Yes, I love that.
Just kind of developing my own curriculum and sort of recreating the wheel from scratch, I guess, or whatever the saying is. And then I was part of a mastermind group with some other men at the time. And one of my really dear friends really saw all the work that I was doing. And he kind of suggested that, hey, if you're doing all this work, why don't you go back to school? And after getting a master's, go get your doctorate and really kind of specialize and focus on the passion of yours, which is, money and emotion. And really that's the rest is history. I went back to school and ended up writing my dissertation on intermittent income, which is for all the people who are part of the gig economy, and that's more and more and more something that we see, especially in bigger cities in New York, Los Angeles, where people just have side gigs all the time, or even just freelancers, writers, actors, even psychologists who work per hour on an hourly basis. And what is that landscape like emotionally and practically? How difficult is it, and how different is it from somebody who earns a stable income? What do they need to do in order to not go through the feast or famine cycle?
Yes.
Because they don't have a steady paycheck, right? So they have to go and hunt.
Yeah, the income fluctuates. And sometimes there's dry spells that are longer than anticipated.
Longer, exactly. And how much do they need to save initially?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the budgets for the financial planners are set for or done for and reverse engineered from a stable income. Let's say a 50-30-20 budget, right, is based on steady income. Well, how much do you need to up your savings and investing amount or percentage if you're intermittent earner? And all of those questions is something that we delved into. So
I would even, I have a lot of, so I have a mix of stable income clients, W-2 employees, right? And clients who are entrepreneurs. And I have a sliding expectation of what that looks like. And even when I have speaking engagements and I talk about, people ask me all the time, like, what should I save? And I'm like, well, it depends on your income and it depends on your lifestyle. So I also think that, talking about money and lifestyle, and we can get into, deeper aspects of the psychology behind it, but we live in a world where we're constantly bombarded with images of how we should live our lives. And of course, that costs money. We can't just live those lifestyles for, I don't know, free because we see somebody on whatever social media platform. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be ads. It's this aspect of, we see other people we know experiencing things. Maybe not so much in the last year because not everybody has been traveling because of COVID, but pre-COVID, we've seen these lifestyles. I kind of laughed a little bit when COVID happened because all of a sudden nobody could go get their hair done, go get their eyelashes done, go get their nails done, like go do all of these things or these, fancy vacations. It was like back to reality of just, what do we need? How do we pair through some of that psychology of wanting to, that old phrase of live up with the Joneses, although I say the Joneses could have bought everything on credit. You don't know that the Joneses are rich or
Agreed.
wealthy.
That's what the Kardashians.
Right? Like, let's look at
Born of
somebody's
Los
balance
Angeles,
sheet.
everybody's got a better this and a bigger that. So, in financial therapy and financial psychology, we call that status envy, right? When
Yeah.
a lot of our decisions and emotions around money come from what status are we chasing, and looking at somebody else and comparing and despairing is a common sort of emotional mindset. Because when we look at somebody else and we envy, or at least feel less than, and feel like, we're not getting to experience the same, experiences of travel, or we don't have the same, level of ability to afford, a similar type of house or cars, whatever the outside stuff is, kind of there is an emotional toll to that.
Yeah, I remember. So in my career, I had a trajectory in my mid to late 20s where I was sitting at boardroom tables with people who had a lot larger net worth than I did. And I drove a used car, and not like the fanciest of used cars. And I had student loan debt still. And like my financial picture was so different than those that I was providing guidance to or even sitting around a table with. And I remember myself going back and trying to really realize, like, you're not devalued because you're not at the same space as someone else. And I think I've ran across this too in managing different generations of wealth. You have some of the younger up and coming individuals who are just entering the workforce who look at their parents and are like, well, I want the same thing as my parents. So I'm going to go out and buy whatever Pottery Barn furniture, yada, yada, so that I can have the same house as my parents do. How do we transition those conversations from want and desire and status to need, build, maintain?
What a great question. I think what we use in all of therapy really is this idea of insight. And the one difficult thing is it's hard to sell insight, right? But it's absolutely necessary to make any sort of change. So a really powerful word that we at Financial Psychology Center use with our clients is the word notice. Notice what it is that you are wanting. Notice how you're feeling. Notice what the emotions are that are coming up when you're planning a vacation, or you're not able to take that vacation because of COVID, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. And the other sort of overall big picture psychological thing that I would mention is I usually think of money as having 4 languages of money. One is the practical, which we're always kind of used to, right? The numbers. Mm-hmm. The next one is the emotional language of money, right? Mm-hmm. there's a cultural language of money, and then there's a spiritual language of money. And so we all encompass or embody some portion of each of those languages, right? And each one of us has, maybe the percentages are more tilted towards practicality or emotional nature or cultural. And what you just described when we're talking about chasing that status or comparing yourself to somebody else and kind of getting lost in the what are my needs? Am I basing my needs on somebody else's outside? That's to me really a cultural issue. And what I mean by culture could be as broad as, the American consumerism culture, but it also can be the culture of your family. What is the culture of your family that you grew up in? What are the narratives of that culture of your family that you learned and you're not probably even conscious of until you get into a room with a financial therapist? And now we get to unpack and discuss these things. Well, did you grow up poor in a really rich neighborhood? That's a common scenario that I see with my clients. Their parents really wanted them to have, the best of the best in life. And, one of the things they did is they had the client go to a really affluent school, but they were the poorest kid in that particular school. So it really kind of sets up this precedent that they walk around and they compare themselves to all these kids. And again, it's really describing that status mindset, right? They're just feeling that scarcity and lack. Like, I don't have this, I don't have the car, I don't have the right clothes. And then eventually what all of this conversation leads to is the conversation of self-worth. What do I feel about myself? What are the emotions tied to my self-worth? And that's something that we get to unpack on the proverbial couch with a financial psychologist and financial therapist.
I think it's you said it so well. I have this conversation with clients quite frequently around their self-worth, not just equating to their net worth. Like, what do they want their experience in life to be? We don't just grow this bucket of money to just look at, right? Of course, we want to grow it and maintain it and pass it along. I think that that's a dream for everyone, to be able to have generational wealth to pass on, or at least enjoy it in their lives, right? If they're blessed to have a generation to pass it on to. That being said, like, I can't tell you how many times I've had these conversations, even with my retired clients, where I'm like, okay, now it's this brain switch for us. You spent all of this time saving and growing and, spending some because you're paying bills. And now it's the time where you get to enjoy it. And it's this element that I constantly run up against. And I think we can get into this too, with the difference in psychology between how a woman thinks about money and a man thinks about money, or at least those individuals who identify in that space, because I think that they're very different. And I've seen it in my clients. And this is the part that so intrigues me. So I'm just really excited to hear what you have to say. But also, like, the male client is usually like, what's the rate of return? How much money did we make? And I have to go along and say, but what do you need it for? And what are you going to do? How do you know you need 20% return or double-digit return? Why are you patting me on the back this year because we'd had such a good return? What did you do in your life? Because at the end of the day, when you're no longer here, what is the impact that you made in the world? No one's going to give a crap what your rate of return was in 2019. They're going to want to know what you did and how you did it, or 2021, or whatever year it is we can pick. How do you see the difference in those behaviors from one individual to the next around goal setting and visioning and self-worth, more than just a number?
What an amazing question. So the way I would sort of help reverse engineer that, and as a psychologist or a therapist, we look at our behavior are sort of the final product, right? Or the surface of what's really going on in our minds and in our hearts and in our souls, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our emotions, our intuitions, and our beliefs and thoughts are all the things that preoccupy all of our emotional or mental state. And behavior, again, is just the final product. So in order to have a conversation, we need to really understand which language that person is speaking. And based on the example you just gave me, the male client is speaking the practical language of money, right? Another intervention that we use in therapy quite often is called inclusion, and it's really understanding or speaking to the client in the same language that they understand. Mm-hmm. The parallel is, for instance, a client who is really interested in sports. I will oftentimes use a lot of sports analogies to use in vernacular from that particular part of our culture to really kind of help them feel understood and gotten, right? Mm-hmm. So in the same way, I would use the practical language of money, the numbers, to talk to that particular client. What's interesting is if you bring in that client and as a couple with their wife may be speaking a different money language. She could be speaking the emotional language or more of the cultural language. And so really helping them to understand that they're actually initially speaking two different languages and bringing that to the surface will help them to understand and hear each other's differences and then be able to understand and negotiate some of these things once they are able to speak a more common similar language. And it's the same thing, the difference between a regular psychologist and a financial planner, right? This is why financial therapy is such a unique unicorn of a profession, right? Because we speak different languages.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in this topic because, especially with Financial Literacy Month this month, it's such a important topic, and financial literacy is like one of those hot topics that's been thrown around in the last year or a couple of years maybe. And I think a lot of times it really includes a lot of practical conversations around money. Financial literacy means addressing the numbers, the budget, the investment, but rarely do we talk about the psychology behind it.
Yes.
And without addressing the psychology, literacy is great, but our behavior will still remain the same. It's the same parallel to, we all know that, eating less and working out more is great. But how come we have, a problem with, our weight and our physical fitness when we know what to do? Knowing what to do is just a small part. And it's the same thing in financial literacy. Knowledge is very powerful, but we also need to address our financial psychology too.
I tell my clients this all the time. I just got done doing an event with Lululemon last month. And I specifically said, if you do not handle the behavioral part of why you're XYZing whatever you're doing with your money, I can give you every strategy in the book. You can try envelopes, you can try, snowballing, you can do whatever tip trick is out there that is trending. They aren't going to work for you if you don't address the behavioral part of things. And we all come to the table with different financial experiences. I use my husband and I as examples all the time. My family, we didn't talk about money because we didn't have it. So why do you talk about something you don't have? It's kind of like how I think we ended up in that space. And you talk about, going to a prestigious school. I went to a private school. And my mom really, really wanted me to go to Catholic school. And the great part about it was I went to an inner city Catholic school. So there was a balance and I wasn't the only. But had I gone to a different type of private school, it would have been that experience. And I can tell you that there were instances where I did feel like that, depending on what circle I was, operating in. And then my husband grew up in the suburbs in a two working parent household, very hardworking, very middle class family, middle class values. It's not like they had, huge amounts of things, or went on lavish vacations, but they didn't have to worry about what was happening inside their house from a financial standpoint. I tell my husband this all the time. He's like, why do you always have to make sure there's food in the fridge? And I'm like, because I know what it's like to not have food in the fridge. And so for me, that's my mechanism of, okay, I want to make sure that my kids never see what I saw growing up and question, the food security source of whatever is happening in their lives. And that happens with finances, but we don't talk about it. And we try to put band-aids over it. You can make 6 figures and make all of your financial worries go away. Guess what? No, they can't. And Biggie had it right. More money, more problems. I'm just saying, like, that is like, he was really talking about that in an aspect that we should be digging into more. If we could only just use rap lyrics as solving all of our problems from a financial standpoint.
Love it. You and I definitely connected on the hip hop tip in our initial call. But I love your story, and this is something that we see time and time again when we are meeting with couples on our proverbial couch, or even one of the partners comes in because they're more ready than the other partner to talk about money. And we see a clash of two worlds, is the way I kind of call it. Your experience, the way you just described, kind of growing up in less affluent or maybe, poverty kind of background. And then your husband is completely different. And without having these conversations, how are we expected to remain unemotional about money? How are we, money is something that we deal with on a daily basis. It is so imperative to our survival. So how are we supposed to, how are we being asked to remain unemotional about something so important, right? It makes no sense. And so when we get to have these conversations with our clients, either as a couple or individually, and this is why I'm so passionate about, financial literacy and financial therapy, in general. My background is actually kind of unique. I was born and raised in Moscow, Russia, in the Soviet Union. So I actually ended up coming to the States in my teens, and I didn't speak English at all. And that's why the specific topic of language is so near and dear to my own story, is because I know what it's like not to speak a language. And one of the things that is very common with clients that we see at FTC is when they start talking about money, they're telling us that, the language of money is so foreign to them that it might as well be Russian or Chinese or something else.
Right.
I'm afraid of numbers. The language of numbers is just, I don't get. The language of money, I don't get. And what happens is that they end up internalizing these feelings of, I'm bad with money. I'm a bad person. And it really then, unfortunately, takes an emotional toll. And it takes an emotional toll in a way where their self-esteem and self-worth just starts to decrease, and it just plummets, right? So how are we supposed to feel confident in our financial decisions when we don't speak the language of money?
And then it comes out in so many different ways too, because then, for myself, like, I didn't think that I was worthy, and I worked in the industry. Like, you're not exempt from your feelings around money because you work in it every single day. When I first started in my career, didn't think I was worthy of it because of the history and the language that was spoken or not spoken in my house around money. And then I transitioned that into spending too much money, buying things that maybe I didn't, because I didn't want to absorb it, because God forbid I have it, right? Like, if I have it, then I have to be responsible with it and recognize that I have it, and I don't know what to do with it. Even though I teach people what to do with it, it's totally different when it's mine versus when it's
underlying
yours.
Emotion?
What underlying emotion? Scarcity, scared, fear.
Real
not one.
responsibility right there.
Hmm. And I share that quite frequently with individuals. And I don't think people in our industry, and I speak from a financial planner's aspect of things, talk enough about the emotions. You and I connected on this. We can take tests all day long on time value equations of money and future valuations of money and options and all of the things that mean jack diddly squat because they are I shouldn't say they don't mean jack dilly squat. They do mean things like, okay, fine, I get it. Like they mean something. But to the general public, they don't mean anything because they're in this foreign language that nobody understands. Rather, it's almost like we should take a test on, do you have the skills to be able to translate whatever this topic is to somebody to help them understand it. I think my job, the most important part of my job is to be a teacher.
Agreed.
That's the most important part of my job. And I get asked that on a quite frequent basis, and people are like, oh, well, I thought you would have said like investments are, watching the market is the most important part of your job. No, absolutely not. How do I help people understand their worth? That is the biggest part of what I do, because I can help them build wealth. If they don't think they're worth it, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. So the meaning behind it is exactly what we all get to address as financial therapists, financial psychologists, or planners who speak the same language of money and emotion. So I'm so passionate about this because you're really underlining what's so dear to my heart, which is the power of language, right?
Mm.
And what we know is that when we don't understand what is being communicated to us, we become disinterested and we just avoid that
Yes.
conversation altogether, right? And it
Yep.
becomes, it can also actually sort of boil over into a conflict, which is something that we see a lot in couples.
Mm-hmm.
When couples show up on our doorstep, they have gotten into so many conflicts over money that by the time they sit down on that couch, they have a hard time even saying one word to each other, right? It's
Yeah.
really contentious. So,
How do
but
you
I'm wondering.
unfold some of those? What are some key pieces to unfold some of those conversations with individuals? I know you have this great curriculum. What are some of those things that people, because that's common. I mean, before they get to your couch, they're probably at my proverbial couch, right? And I uncover it, but I don't know what to do with it as an advisor, right? So how do we help them have those healthy conversations around money and not turn it into a
So,
divorce?
yeah, first is again understanding what language do you speak and what's your communication style. There's
Mhm.
a therapist whose name was Virginia Satir, and she outlined different communication styles, which one of them is the blamer, another one is the placater, another one is the computer, the super rational person. So really, in the proverbial room and couch, we get to again outline what is your communication style, and then we get to address things like concept of circular causality, which is super important in coupleship. Circular causality means that each person brings something to the table in a positive way and in a negative way, and they continue the same dance that the couple has. And when one person engages in blaming, they're attributing and contributing to the negative emotions and the negative energy that the couple shares at that point, and sort of ends up dancing that particular dance. So
Mm-hmm.
in order to address this, we get to talk to both of the partners and really point out that it's not, Bob's fault or Jane's fault. It's not Bob's responsibility or Jane's sole responsibility to fix this. It's both of you guys, how you come together. What is that dance? You need to be aware of what dance you get into, and then have specific tools like, a money date, which is a very
Mm-hmm.
common sort of newer term in our industry. Money dates is something that you basically have the couple meet either on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis to discuss finances. What's really important when you have set those money dates is to have structure to those meetings. So that each person can feel safe and secure, and that they won't be judged, that they won't be adding to the conflict. So really discussing things like a fair fighting contract.
Tell me more about that. What's a fair fighting contract?
Fair fighting contract is exactly what it sounds like it is. It's guidelines and a contract between the two partners of how they want to have that conversation. So no blaming. We don't talk over each other. There's no aggression. There's no, violence or violent language. And each couple gets to decide what they want to put into that contract. So each partner feels like they have a buy-in into this conversation, into this negotiation. Another amazing tool is called a moratorium. The moratorium is when one person says, hey, this is, I'm getting a little too heated, and this conversation is getting a little too much, and I can't see this being productive. So can we take a break? And it doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't mean that, I'm going to go plan, of how
your demise.
Exactly. It's really just, we're on the same team. I'm trying to be on the same page with you, but something is triggering me. So I need to go and process that. I'm going to go away and I will come back. And that moratorium word, it's like a code word. Hey, I'm calling a moratorium for the next half hour, for the next hour, for the day, for the week, depending on how triggered I feel. And part of the fair fighting contract is that the other partner respects the boundary that the initial partner set.
Yeah, I think that I got asked this question as a part of an event that I was just speaking at, and the person inquired, how do I start talking to my spouse about money? And my response was, you first have to understand each other's stories with it and your behaviors behind it. You can't go into strategy if you don't understand each other first. And I don't think that they expected me to say that, right? Because I think that the first expectation is that money date should be, oh, you're going over, the checking account, the credit card transactions, you're going through all of those things. And I think those are good parts to be inclusive and make sure that you're having communication around. But what about what you want to experience? What do you want your goals to be together? And separately, what are your dreams? Where do you want to work? What do you want to do? How do you want your children to function? What responsibilities do you want to teach them? How do you function with, do you want to have an allowance? Do you want them to have chores? Do you all of these things are related to money in some sort.
Isn't that overwhelming when we just say that in one stream of consciousness like that? It could be overwhelming, and I still agree with you. And again, this is a conversation about both partners understanding where the other one is coming from. What I love is that we also start with the money story. The reason being is that it provides the context and the meaning behind why we're doing what we're doing, why each partner is doing what they're doing. Without the context, it's like, having a broken GPS system. And if it's off by even 1 degree, you're going to end up in a whole different place and a whole different goal than where you intended to. So it's really important to understand that context for each of the partners. And I love that you said that. So one of the things, again, kind of going back to the idea of understanding each other and power of language, I'm wondering if you'd be open to doing a little experiment.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
I'm putting you on the spot. So imagine that I ask you to sit down and watch a movie. Let's say it's, one of these amazing, fun money movies like Wolf of Wall Street or what's another one, like The Big Short or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine that the same movie is dubbed in another language, like Russian or Chinese or something like that.
Yes, I am now going cross-eyed.
How soon into the movie will you be disinterested?
I mean, I would probably give it like 5 minutes of reading subtitles.
So like you're pulling out your phone within how long?
Oh, pulling out my phone. I always have my phone out when I'm watching movies,
Okay.
Dr. Alex. Like I like that is this like that's something like silly that I probably should never have, but I'm admitting that I always have my phone out. So I'm already
Let's
scrolling
say I
social media.
ask
I'm
you
already
to watch.
probably posting like, what is this movie about? How can I understand this better? Right?
Right. So let's say I keep asking you to watch this movie, and you pull out your phone, you keep looking out the window and avoid watching the movie. But let's say I still keep asking you to watch the movie. At what point will you become angry, and that this becomes a conflict?
I would probably say when I start to feel like um, you're making me feel stupid because I don't want to watch the movie, right? Like that's how I translate it. Like you keep asking me to watch something, but I don't want to watch it because I don't understand it. So therefore I don't feel intelligent around something. And you keep asking me, so now that emotion keeps coming up. And I'd say probably, I don't know, probably 5 times. I'd probably give you 5 times to ask me that. And then I probably lose my brain cells.
So let's say that it's no longer dubbed. So that means it's not even in English. It's completely in like Russian or Chinese. Are you gonna get really upset?
Yeah, I am because I don't know how to read Russian or Chinese. I don't know how to understand it. And I'm
Well,
Russian. I'm
the
embarrassed to say I don't
parallel
even
is this
know.
is how our clients feel when we're asking them to speak the language of money, and they don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
This is how they feel conflicting and stressful and anxious feelings and emotions when they're being asked to continuously address, something that is they find frustrating, they find they don't get it, they find that they're just bad at it,
Mm-hmm.
and it again eats at their self-esteem and self-worth. And
Yeah.
nobody's taking the time to explain it to them in the words that they understand.
Yeah, I addressed this the other day with new clients that were coming in to me, each at different spaces with their financial understanding. And I said to one, I understand that you are more fluent in this space. However, any conversation I ever have with you will be geared towards your partner because they do not feel confident in this space. And we need to make sure that that person feels just as confident in this space. And so if it feels like I am quote unquote dumbing something down, I didn't say it dumbing something out, but like if I'm simplifying or watering something down, it's because I want to make sure that I'm not speaking in a space where it's not being understood. Um, and thankfully, that person was really understanding. But I think sometimes we enter in situations where, as advisors, especially, you have one person that's you and that person are speaking the same language, and that other person isn't. And unfortunately, most times have found throughout my career that it is the man. However, I have had a few women who are speaking the same language as me and their partner isn't. And but I've come to find in my practice that a lot of women do come to me because they feel like I'm approachable, whereas I don't speak that foreign language. How do we get more people to not feel embarrassed by saying, like, hey, could you time out? Could you explain that again in a way that doesn't sound like it needs subtitles? How do we
Love it.
change? How do we
Love
get
it.
people to
So
exercise
this is
their
this is such
right?
a yeah, this is such an important topic, and I think all of us, and I look at this as so many of us professionals in the financial and therapy industry are in this bubble where we talk about the money taboo, and we keep talking about the importance of financial literacy and financial psychology and the mindset and all of these things. But again, I feel like we're in a bubble, and that the general public does not really get to have these conversations. And I feel like the clients that do end up working with somebody like you or somebody, with our SEC staff that are very approachable, just like you are. They get to have these conversations. However, the majority of people out there, they don't. And so really, it's a really slow process where through being the educator that you talked about, through psychoeducation is a term that we use in therapy. Mm-hmm. And, highlighting these things on social media. This is why we post different particular topics. One topic that we have on our social media on Fridays is called the 4 sources of financial emotions. When we talk about cultural aspects, we talk about birth order, we talk about intermittent income and how that affects our financial emotions. And there's a whole series of social media posts geared towards understanding why how our financial emotions bubble up to the surface. Mm-hmm. And other psychoeducational pieces, like we have a confession of a financial therapist, where we notice it's kind of a heartbreaking stories of our clients. Mm-hmm. That this is the reality that they never get to express to anyone in the world, and the one person that knows about it is probably me or it's you. Mm-hmm. Because they were able to confide in us. And of course, without naming any names, we get to sort of shine a light on this really difficult topic and talk about, a wife, a mom who felt like she was always the third person in a relationship after money. Mm-hmm. But her husband would always choose money over her, always. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't get this kind of narrative out there in the world, but we get it, through FCC and the work you do, and several of the other financial therapists that I know.
It's just, if we want to, we could spend a whole nother episode talking about this too, but if we want to change the landscape of what wealth looks like, and really in a booming country that we live in, to have such disparities between wealth and income and things of that sort, and really create a lot of change so that we see more people out of poverty, more people thriving from a financial standpoint. We got to talk about these things. It's not just the strategy. It's not how to get to 6 figures fast. It's not a magical formula to get to, be a millionaire by 25. Like, they're none of these like hashtaggy, trendy, sticky topics with lots of fancy butterflies around them.
I'll say that it's actually both. For some people that works, just strategy alone works for some people. But for some people, they need to be able to talk about it. They need to be able to process it. And there's no one way to get to that same end goal. Your journey is yours. It's unique to you. So helping you to figure that out is part of what our job is at FCC, at Financial Psychology Center.
And I would say too, each partner in a, serious relationship is going to have one thing that works for one person and one thing that works for the other. It's I would assume, if your experience is like mine, they're usually different. And so finding that lovely compromise of what works to be able to communicate for both of them is the key to our job and what we do sometimes. We could continue talking, but
because
go ahead.
We have a Love and Money course that we just put out about a couple of months ago, and it's designed to really help people understand what are the most common maladaptive money behaviors, like over shopping, enabling, and avoidance as well. So we were thinking that we would love to offer you and your listeners a special discount of 50% off. And when we use the code of Thrive21, and we would love to offer that to your listeners. Thank you so much, Dr. Alex. That I
can't plug you enough from an aspect of like the content that you produce. I absolutely love. You need to be following Dr. Alex and the Financial Psychology Center on the content that they are putting out, because I believe it's transformative content, not just like it's beyond the strategy aspect of things. And I think it's accessible. That's the piece that I think is so important too, from an accessibility standpoint. You don't have to be at a certain level of knowledge to be able to take in the degree of wisdom that you are sharing. So thank you so much for joining today. And you know what? We might just have to do this again.
I feel like same.
I think we might have to do it again.
Yep.
Well, any specific spaces besides the Love and Money course, anything that you would love people, where should they hang out with you? I know you and I hang out on LinkedIn for the most part. Are there any other social media channels that you and your company utilize? Yeah,
so we're on basically all four social media platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as Financial Psychology Center. And I'm also on LinkedIn as Dr. Alex Melkumian. And our website is financialpsychologycenter.com. So please reach out to us if you just want to have a conversation, or if you really need some assistance and guidance. Again, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Alex. And I hope that I can channel some of your sunshine from California today, because we had no snow earlier yesterday, and now we have snow. So hopefully by the time people listen to this, there's no more snow. All right. Thank you, Dr. Alex.
Really appreciate it.